All right. Good afternoon, folks. We are excited to have you here today. Give us a minute while we let people into the room. Um, Getting started and looking forward to having everyone here today. So give us just a second to let everyone into the room. Um, all right. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Getting started. Um, Wanted to just have one more minute to let folks into the room as they get here. Looking forward to talking with everyone today. All right, looks like we've got a good number here. I'm going to get started. My name is Anna Osland, and I'm the Director of Research here at the Blanco Center, and we are excited to welcome you to our Lunch and Learn for Whole Health Louisiana. Whole Health Louisiana is a collaborative effort led by the Louisiana Department of Health as the public sector anchor and funder of the Whole Health Louisiana initiative. The Blanco Center leads the plan's implementation and evaluation. If you're unfamiliar with what Whole Health Louisiana is, it's the state's cross-sector initiative intended to systematically address, mitigate, and prevent childhood adversity within our systems of care and support. Whole Health has four priority areas and goals: collaboration, awareness, workforce, and prevention and healing. With these priorities in mind, Whole Health Louisiana's vision is to build a state where children, families, and community members across Louisiana are healthy and thriving, regardless of who they are or where they live. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Quinn, who'll be our moderator for today's session and introduce our speaker. All right, take it away, Quinn.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everybody. I'm Quinn. I am a research associate here at the Blanco Center, and I will be moderating today's webinar. So as part of the Whole Health Louisiana initiative, we are holding a variety of different activities aimed to raise awareness and deepen conversations about trauma-informed care practices. Our virtual Lunch and Learn series touches on the workforce priority area of the Whole Health Louisiana plan and features presentations from industry professionals and subject matter experts. All of our planned webinars are listed on the Eventbrite page that you all use to register for today's event if you're curious about our webinars in June and beyond. So before I introduce our speaker for today, I want to first mention that our ASL interpreter is pinned on the screen, and you should see Alyssa's interpretation throughout today's presentation. And if you have any questions about that, please do let us know. And in addition, if you are attending today's webinar for CEU credits, please remember to complete the post survey to receive your credits. Okay, and with those announcements, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, Lindsay Boxey. She is a licensed professional counselor, certified in perinatal mental health and retained parental leave coaching, dedicated to improving the emotional and mental well-being of parents, caregivers, and growing families. She is the owner of LMP Counseling and Consulting, where she specializes in supporting individuals navigating pregnancy, postpartum transitions, parenting stress, and life changes that impact emotional health. Boxy's clinical work centers on trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and evidence-based practices, with a strong focus on supporting maternal mental health across the reproductive lifespan. In addition to her counseling practice, she provides training for healthcare professionals, early childhood educators, and community organizations on maternal mental health, perinatal support strategies, and family-centered care. With a background in early childhood mental health consultation, family systems work, and clinical leadership, she brings a holistic understanding of how families and workplaces can better support parents. Her work is rooted in compassion, advocacy, and the belief that supporting parents ultimately strengthens communities. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lindsay to begin her presentation. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Perfect. Thank you, Quinn. Um, good, good morning, good afternoon, guys. It's so good to be here. And so maternal mental health and parental leave coaching are two of the things that I can stand on a soapbox and talk about all day. So, with this opportunity to be able to share and collaborate this with you all today, I'm very excited about it, and I hope that you all enjoy. So, I'm going to share the PowerPoint in just a second. Let me get this up. Okay. So the topic that we're talking about today is maternal mental health and the workplace and what it looks like to support employees before and after birth. Um, so what I'd like to start off by just is acknowledging the foundation of both of these spaces, the maternal mental health space and the workplace space, that the foundation of both of those are people. And I found that people care about what matters to them. And the workplace and the workforce is developed and maintained by people. So my goal today is to hopefully to impact, educate, and connect with the people, that's y'all, that make up these workplaces. So why does this matter? And let me just take a second to move this screen. There we go. So why does this matter? So I thought it'd be really interesting to break apart what the functions of most organizations look like, being people, money, and data. So that when most companies start, it's maintaining people, which can look like employees, look like customers, money, whether that's money that they are seeing what things cost or how they're going to make money, and then data, how the people and the money correlate. And so when what this references to in the space of maternal mental health in the workplace is that the people in this are the people affected. The 1 in 5 women affected experience perinatal mood and anxiety disorders during or after pregnancy. And that's 1 in 10 men. The cost of untreated, if untreated, increasing medical, mental health care, discontinued breastfeeding, family dysfunction, child abuse, neglect, and potential adverse effects on early brain development. So we won't get so much into what this cost can look like in real time, but if this is something that you're interested in, there are several studies out there that can link, that have done the research that link what concerns in medical and mental health care can do for the early brain development of children. And then data that 50% goes undiagnosed. That perinatal mood and anxiety disorder is one of the most underdiagnosed obstetric complication in America. Over 400,000 infants born to mothers who are depressed. So why does this matter? This isn't something that stays at home. Maternal mental health shows up at work in productivity, engagement, retention. So it's not just personal anymore, it's professional, it's both. Okay. So what I found is that when people listen to things, it's a space of you are either listening and engaging in conversation, or you're listening and someone is talking to you or at you, which is kind of like what we're doing right now, that I'm sitting here talking, and I really will hope that I could see you all, but that's just the format. But that I'm talking to you and you're listening in. Then there's this other lane that I think is really more diverse, is that I introduce you to something that matters, that could matter, that could feel relatable. And so let's talk about Janet. So I'm going to give you some information about Janet, and throughout the talk today, we're going to just follow her along a little bit in the things that we learn. So Janet is 30 years old, recently married. This is her first child, her first pregnancy. It was uncomplicated, meaning that there were no complications really during the pregnancy or as in her birthing process. There were no real complications. She has a job. She's an office manager at a medical office, and she loves her job. Support a family, but everyone works, which means that they are supportive, but they have their limitations because they also have to go to work. no previous mental or medical health concerns, and she has been feeling really sad, like more than usual. No energy, and she's been crying often. She just had her 6-week postpartum visit, and her medical staff was amazing. They did the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. Results show concerns. They even gave her referral for mental health care as follow-up. But now it's time for Janet to go back to work. Okay. So before we follow Janet into what this is going to look like for her to go back to work, I wanted to do just a little background on to leave or not to leave. And so just within our state of Louisiana, that if a company has more than 25 employees, it can offer 6 weeks off for normal pregnancy and childbirth. And quotations around the idea of normal pregnancy and childbirth. Up to 4 months if medically necessary due to pregnancy-related disabilities or complications. Making note that this leave is unpaid and focuses on pregnancy-related disabilities and recovery and not the bonding time. Okay. Then there's another space of this for the federal FMLA protection. And this is that FMLA, the Federal Family Medical and Leave Act, where the organizations have over 50 employees and the employee has worked at least 12 months there, so at least 1 calendar year, and the employee worked at least 1,250 hours in the past year. And the benefit of this is that they get 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave. So their job is protected, but it is also unpaid. And they may use their sick and vacation time if the company offers it. And also short-term disability is something that's potentially offered as well if the company has bought into this as a part of their benefit package. And that can be 6 to 8 weeks, and it is paid, but at a percentage. So Janet has short-term disability. She works for a company that has that FMLA protection. She's covered. She has 6 to 8 weeks and it's paid. It's a percentage, but it's paid. But she has used her sick and vacation time. And so she's at her 6 to 8 week point. Remember, she just went to her 6-week postpartum visit with her OB, and she is considering what it's going to look like to go back to work. And she has no additional time. Okay. So we heard a few things about how Janet has been experiencing things that she has been feeling, and we'll go back a little bit, really sad, like more than usual, no energy and crying often. Now, we're not diagnosing Janet, but let's look at a few of the perinatal mental health diagnosis and see if maybe we can see something that may possibly relate to how Janet is experiencing things. So, what is perinatal mental health? It includes the full emotional experience of becoming and being a parent from the first days of pregnancy through the years that follow. Understanding its scope is the first step toward meaningful workplace support. And we're going to get to the second step, but this is our first step. So, prenatal depression. Depression experienced during pregnancy, characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest in activities, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating. Postpartum depression, this is what I'm sure everyone has heard of a little bit, a more severe and persistent form of depression. It develops after childbirth, involves intense sadness, anxiety, hopelessness, and difficulty bonding with the baby. Now, they typically say about a 1 year. Call me a rebel, I say about 2. Perinatal anxiety disorder includes generalized anxiety disorders, panic disorders, social anxiety during pregnancy or postpartum. And those symptoms can look like excessive worry, panic attacks, and fear. Postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder. Try to say that quick a few times. Characterized by intrusive, unwanted thoughts, obsessions, and repetitive behaviors, compulsions. often centered around the baby's safety. Postpartum psychosis. It is rare but severe mental illness with rapid onset, meaning it happens really quickly, and usually within the first few weeks of postpartum. And those symptoms can look like hallucinations, delusions, confusion, requiring immediate medical attention. Now, remember, we're not diagnosing Janet. We're just bringing some awareness to what she may be experiencing. And so we spoke a little bit about who Janet is, what she possibly may be experiencing. Let's talk a little bit about the transition from person, parent, and employee. Now, we met Janet in this phase of her life that she is now a parent transitioning into an employee. But I wonder how it would be if we just still held space for who she is as a person. So, returning to work after parental leave is a layered transition that asks individuals to hold multiple identities simultaneously, often without adequate support. And understanding what this transition actually involves helps the leaders and teams to respond with empathy. And so we can first identify the shift. I work with moms and moms transitioning into back into the workspace. And a lot of what I hear them say is, I don't even know who I am anymore. This identity shift of who am I now? Parenthood fundamentally reshapes the sense of self, priorities, purpose. What I knew to be just baseline, that's been challenged in more ways than once. And I don't really know what comes next. Loss of routine and autonomy, sleep deprivation, feeding schedules, and unpredictable needs disrupt all sense of control. And if you've ever had any experiences with babies, we know that they run the show. We are at their disposal and all these things that are necessary in taking care of them. And so now she's adapting to what this new routine looks like and some new awareness to what her autonomy looks like. Mental and emotional load, the invisible labor of planning, worrying, and managing family logistics doesn't clock out at 9 a.m. So I want to bring Janet back into your forefront a little that she's at her 6th week and she's preparing to go back to work. And she loves her job. And previously, the workspace that she's in, she loves it and they love her. Janet knows everything there. She's the office manager. She takes care of everything and everyone there. And for the past 6 weeks, her life has been all about this little baby. And she's done her due diligence. She's gotten the perfect childcare. She's comfortable in them. She feels comfortable and confident in their ability to care for her child while she's going back to work. But she clocks out of motherhood and clocks into employee to being office manager. But it doesn't just shift away. This is that mental and emotional load that's just still running in her brain. Is her baby okay? What is expected of her here? And so, a quick little did you know, a psychological reorganization of self when a woman becomes a mother is known as matrescence. And it's a developmental transition that is often compared to the adolescent phase of life due to hormonal surges, body changes, and identity and relationship shifts. I think that we are fairly familiar with the teenage phase, the adolescent phase, where, oh, they're just moody teenagers. They're just transitioning. They're just growing from childhood and adolescence to adulthood, and we are aware of what that can look like. So being mindful that this shift from person to parent and entering into employee, these shifts and these hormonal surges and body changes and identity shifts, they're present there too. So what do parents experience? So what is Janet and other parents similar to her? What could they possibly be experiencing? What does it look like in their point of view? Physical, emotional, and mental. Guilt about being at work versus being at home. chronic exhaustion beyond normal tiredness, pressure to perform as if nothing has changed, emotional overload from carrying two worlds. Remember, Janet loved her job. She also loves being a mom. How does she balance both? Where is the playbook that teaches her how to balance both? That's just a point because we're actually going to talk about a playbook at the end a little bit about that could actually help a little. And then the pressures to perform as if nothing has changed. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide too. These experiences are common, yet they remain largely invisible inside organizations. Naming them is the first act of support, and advocating for them is the second. So we spoke about having that awareness and being able to name them when we talked about the different types of maternal mental health. But here we are at our second step of advocating. Part of you being able to advocate and be a voice is understanding why they stay silent. So most parents don't share these struggles at work. They fear being seen as less committed, less capable, less professional, being judged as a parent or an employee, maybe even being terminated. Um, I may hear some things in coaching and assisting moms in the psychotherapy space that I didn't want anyone to think I couldn't handle it. I just pushed through until I couldn't. So creating space for these conversations is not a luxury. It is a retention and well-being strategy. And I want to sit there for just a second that creating this space to talk to anyone having these transitions, even if it's for you to create the space for yourself, it can sometimes feel like a luxury that we don't have time for. But when we think of it as a retention for well-being in the grand scheme of things in a company, in a workspace, do we want employees to stay and do we want them to be well? I think is the question that we ask ourselves here. So, how would you advocate for Janet? What would you advocating for Janet look like with this information that you've already heard? And so we spoke about what parents experience. Now we look at how it actually shows up at work. So the challenges of the perinatal period, they don't disappear at the office door. Remember, we spoke about that it doesn't clock out at 9 a.m. When she drops that baby off to childcare and clocks in and walks in that door at work, that it doesn't just shift off. They manifest as observable behaviors that are frequently misread as performance problems when they're actually just support gaps. Recognizing the difference is critical when learning how to name and support and advocate. So a few ways that it can show up: brain fog, difficulty concentrating, forgetting tasks, or making uncharacteristic errors, all linked to sleep deprivation and or hormonal changes. And I want to keep kind of bringing into our brains that Janet was really good at her job. Everyone relied on her. She knew that job. Even if it was the smallest of details, she knew every employee. She knew all the details. She ran that office. And so if she comes in and she's making these errors, it's uncharacteristic of her. She may be experiencing some brain fog or some struggles to focus. Anxiety and irritability, heightened emotional reactivity, worry, short patience that could affect team dynamics and communication, or burnout, depletion that builds over months when the demands of parenting and work far exceed available support and recovery time. She's not sleeping. She's feeding the baby. She's taking care of her home. Maybe she's not eating as well. Her schedule of when she was just person and turned into parent and turned into employee, everything has kind of become a lot bigger for her to hold. Disengagement, withdrawal from collaboration, reduced initiative, or quiet quitting is often signal that an employee is struggling, not slacking. Okay. So kind of going back, and I think that I position this for it to build. So I want to show you how we unfolding. We've talked about what parents experience, how it shows up at work, and now we're looking at the barriers. What's happening at work that feel like barriers for them to show up the way that they need, and what's the barriers to the support? So even when employees want support, structural and cultural barriers prevent them from asking for it. And many don't speak up because they fear how it will be perceived by peers, managers, or by the leadership. So, lack of understanding. Managers may not recognize perinatal mental health as a real clinical experience and dismiss it as a personal matter. This is where the education comes into play. Learning what it can look like, which we just did. We spoke about how it can present, what are they experiencing, and what it could look like. Inflexibility, rigid schedules, meeting cultures, and performance standards that don't account for the realities of new parenthood. So, I have the pleasure of working with so many diverse people that are in so many different walks of life, which means that they have so many different companies that they work for. So I get a little insight on what it looks like for them to operate in a workforce. And there's often something called a point system that has become very stressful, especially for people returning into work or with any medical concerns, that if they don't go to work, there's a point. If they have to call in, there's a point. If they're sick, there's a point. If they, whatever can come about that can, whatever comes about that leads into not being flexible, it's a point. These points add up and they can result in write-ups and termination. So there's this fear around, I need to show up. I need to show up in this particular way because I could lose my job. Multiple deadlines in short time frame. Janet has been gone. She was a vital part of this ecosystem of this job. And so I'm sure there's so many things left for her to take care of. But she comes into work on her first day and they're saying, we're so glad you're back. We've missed you. By the way, for the past 3 months, or for the past 6 weeks, rather, I'm sorry, here's all the things that was not complete while you were gone. We need all this done, and we need it done now. Multiple deadlines in short time frame. Fear of judgment. The perception that disclosing struggles will result in being seen as weak, uncommitted, or unpromotable. Janet loves her company. She may even want to have some type of promotion where she becomes maybe from office manager. Maybe she wants to move up into the HR department. Maybe move into another department that gives her more money, more opportunity. But if she comes in from maternity leave and she's not doing well, and there's the gaps that are there, the gaps of support that are there don't support her, they may see her as being uncommitted, unpromotable. Limited mental health support. Parental leave coaches and EAPs that are underpromoted, hard to access, or don't include perinatal specialized providers. And so this is an absolute barrier because some of these companies are some of your companies that you work for. They have these resources, but if they're underpromoted and we don't know that they're there, then we can't use them. And so with this knowledge and awareness, we could dismantle these barriers. So we reframe the narrative. The old lens, performance issues. This employee seems distracted, disengaged, not meeting expectations. Something is wrong with their work ethic or commitment. The new lens says a support need. This employee is navigating a significant life transition without adequate resources. The gap is in our support structure, not their capability. And so with the idea of a reframe, when we shift how we see this, we can change how we respond. A compassionate reframe doesn't lower the bar, it opens up the door to interventions that actually work. And organizations who adopt this lens, they end up building teams where people stay, grow, and bring their best. And I want to just recall retention and wellness. Do you want employees that can stay and be well while they stay? So the question is, how can I help them? This is the question that I want you to start asking yourself in this moment. Well, how can I help them? And if you've drawn a blank, that's okay, because I got you. How employees can support. Meaningful support doesn't require a massive budget or a complete policy overhaul because that sounds like a lot to do. That sounds overwhelming, maybe even for the company. A complete policy overhaul. It just requires intention, consistency, and cultural commitment. So, where do we start? Normalizing the transition. Create the language and culture that acknowledges returning to work as a significant life event. Let them know that you see them. They may be struggling to even acknowledge it as something that's consistent, that's considerable as well. And so you saying, hey, this is normal, may even give them permission to do so for themselves. Offering flexibility. Flexible scheduling, remote options, and phased return plans signal trust and reduce the pressure that wear employees down. Provide those mental health resources, promoting parental leave coaching, EAP access, perinatal specialized therapy referrals, lactation support, and destigmatize the benefit usage. Often people don't use the benefits because of fear of retaliation. Well, if I take off, then here's that point system. Or if I take off, then I won't get this promotion, or they won't think that I value my job. But if we normalize this, then we create a different environment altogether. Train the leadership. Equip the managers with language, skills, and confidence to have supportive conversations without overstepping or diagnosing. We are not diagnosing. So I mentioned a few times, even in the introduction, that I am a parental leave coach. And I've mentioned it a few times as resource and things that can be used to help support and advocate. And so I want to give you just an idea on what parental leave coaching is. It is a structured supportive process that helps both employees and employers identify, communicate, and plan for needs, goals, and potential barriers across every stage of the parental journey. They can be contracted by the employee or the employer. And so what does it look like? The coaching process is where coaches work with the employees and employers to document the expectations, the wants, the needs, and identifying potential barriers, establishing those clear goals for each phase, and ensuring both parties understand and can agree on the plan. So part of the goal of that coach is to is to ask the questions that they don't know to ask for themselves just yet. It's to touch on the things that, well, I didn't even think about that. The coach has the structured process that says, that's why I'm here to make sure that we cover all the grounds. What are the barriers to the things that you want to help you for you to help you to manage this transition as the parent, but also for the employer, I'm sorry, to have the things in structured order so that they can manage while you're gone. So the phases covered: pregnancy, birth, postpartum, transition back to work. And so an example of what this could look like is, does the employee want to be reached out to after giving birth? And by who? That's something that we would put in that coaching strategy. Very often, the process of returning back to work is uncertain. I don't know who to contact. I'm not sure who the person is, or they contacted me and I didn't really like that. Doing all this work in the beginning stages before we even get to birthing process and knowing what's expected, or asking the questions on transitioning back into work. Well, what's expected? What could it look like? What are our options? Having these conversations ahead of time can take a lot of stress off of the process. Ongoing support. Coaches provide regular check-ins to monitor the progress, update that plan as circumstances change, because they will, and make connections to accommodate and provide resources. This could look like assisting with that planning a phased return. Oftentimes, employees and employers don't even consider a phased return, which looks like, well, maybe instead of coming in full time, you may come in part time. Instead of coming into work every day in person, there may be some remote days and start to ease in, I'm sorry. Key benefits look like both employee and employers gain clarity, alignment, and a shared roadmap for success during one of life's most significant transitions. So your role and the bigger picture. Support for parents extends beyond maternity leave and beyond one employee. It reaches partners, adoptive and foster parents, caregivers, and the teams that surround them. Every person in a leadership or HR role has the ability to create meaningful impacts, and it starts with awareness and moves to action. So who needs the support? Working mothers returning from leave, partners navigating shared parental responsibilities, caregivers managing invisible labor at home, employees supporting a partner through perinatal challenges, and then the commitments, being aware, learn the signs, recognize what perinatal mental health actually looks like in the workplace, being supportive, creating space, checking in with intention, listen without judgment or unsolicited advice. Being proactive, build these systems before a crisis. Policy, training, and cultures shape every individual experience. So I think this is very important to point out. Even if you are not leadership, you could use your voice to inspire them. So I think just in true fashion of being a therapist and being a clinician, I cannot speak in this type of platform and not mention self-care. I just cannot. It's just in me to always mention self-care. And because it's something that we often are not tending to the way that we should. So I've asked you, I think when we first started, I said that my goal here was to impact and educate and connect with you and asking you to advocate and use your voice. And all of these things are beautiful and wonderful, but none of these things can properly be done if you are empty. And so self-care isn't selfish. As leaders and colleagues, our capacity to support others, especially through a significant life transition like parenthood, directly correlates with our own well-being. The adage, you can't pour from an empty cup, rings particularly true here. Recognize your limits. Awareness of personal boundaries and energy levels is the first step. Pushing past these consistently leads to reduced capacity and empathy. You cannot hold space for someone else if you are running empty. So refuel deliberately. Engage in practices that genuinely replenish your energy, whether it's setting clear work-life boundaries, pursuing hobbies, or seeking your own support systems. Refuel you. This isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental requirement for impactful leadership. And so I have this last little quote here. How we support someone in one of life's biggest transitions doesn't just affect their work, it impacts their healing, their identity, and their ability to show up in every role they hold. And so I have some information here, just some questions if you want to connect. I have my contact, my email. If you'd like to scan that QR code and just schedule some time to meet with me. And like I said, this is my soapbox. I can talk about this all day long. I also added some resources here. If you are not familiar with Postpartum Support International, I encourage you to get familiar. I think they're going to be putting the links in the chat for you all. Just go on there and click on everything. And just, they have so much good information there. Um, My training as a parental leave coach came from retained parental leave coaching. And so that playbook that I spoke about, like the questions and the strategies to assist parents in transitioning and in assisting leadership and employers in the transition, that the parental leave playbook is a really good place to start. And it really guides you through. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And I think we are going to open up for any questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Lindsay, for that presentation. That was really, really amazing. Love hearing about all your expertise. And this topic is a topic that we haven't touched yet in our whole Health Louisiana Lunch and Learn series. So I'm glad that you were able to, break that open. So we're gonna go ahead and start feeling some questions. We already have a question in here that says, clinical director here for a managed care organization. We have a maternal care quality initiative on a large scale for our members. Would like to discuss outside of this setting some options to incorporate in our initiatives for employee mothers in our member population.
Awesome. Yes, please. Please use the information that I shared on that last slide. I would love to connect and figure out what's the best way we can help.
Lindsay, would you we can post your email in the
Mhm.
chat if you're comfortable with us sharing
Absolutely.
your email for people who want to get directly into contact with you.
Yes. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So we will share Lindsay's email in a bit for anyone who has anything they want to discuss with Lindsay directly. Our next question is, would love to have the playbook. Will it be provided?
So it's not provided, but I don't know if I still can have the ability to share. I can share how to locate it. Let's see.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead
yeah,
and
go
share.
ahead.
I have that pulled up. So one of the links that are in the chat is to there it is. So the CPLleadership.com. Once you go to that website, that link there, it's going to bring you straight to the playbook. But there's tons of resources on here as well, some things for employers. Dr. Amy Beacom, she's the one who trained me in parental leave coaching, and she wrote this book. And there's some free resources here as well, just to give some guidance and some information. And so the book can be purchased here on that website. Okay.
Melissa asked, do you have resources that you would recommend for working moms? I am a HR director and licensed counselor. I personally have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. I always say there is no handbook for being a working mom.
You bring a really good point, Melissa. Please send me an email. I have a few resources that I think would be really helpful for you. Please jot down my email and just send me an email and I will get those to you.
And for the people on the call, Lindsay, can you talk a little bit about those resources for working moms, like what it looks like, what it consists of?
Sure. So a lot of it is you doing some internal work. It does look like leaning into some confidence in you as just a mom, a person. I know we spoke a little bit about the identity shifts, but a lot of managing all of these identities, it looks like stepping into this confidence of you, some self-worth moments of saying, I can manage these tasks. It is hard task, identifying them as they are, and then there's also some system plays in prioritizing things, managing the values of things that we can touch on as well in those resources.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Hannah asked, will this presentation be provided? Lindsay, if you're comfortable with sharing out your slide deck to the attendees today, we can make that happen if you're fine with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So, yes, to all of our attendees, we can send out, we'll be sending out an email later today, and we'll have the slide deck attached for all who want to, review it after today's webinar. Giving it a couple more seconds for people to drop in any additional questions that they have. Oh, I see another one. So, Andres asked, postpartum challenges show up differently for mothers and fathers, yet many workplace policies still assume a one-size-fits-all experience. What should employers and policymakers be doing to better identify, support, and accommodate the full range of postpartum mental health needs?
Mm, that is so true and so very important. I think even in my presentation, I touch a good bit on the maternal part of things and how we followed Janet, who's a woman. But there's also this other storyline of how fathers are a part of this. A lot of the leave is a lot of the leaves in policy is also pertaining to the mother. And so fathers don't actually even qualify for some of the leave. They have to advocate for it for themselves. And so that looks like being aware of where those shortcomings are and advocating for them. Um, Short-term disability is one of those that it's directly for the mom. And so allowing that to be something that you speak up with your organizations about and saying, what does it look like to support me in this? I know we spoke a little bit about how 1 in 5 women are impacted by postpartum, but 1 in 10 men are also impacted by this. And so Andre brings a really good point that sometimes often the men are excluded from this discussion, but they should not be.
We have another question that asks, how difficult would it be to coach someone returning to work who has a child with health issues, for example, a stay in the NICU?
Okay. And so the beauty of the parental leave coaching process is that it has no real restrictions to it, that is really it's customizable to the circumstances. And so I think I mentioned that as the plan is created, it is taking into consideration the wants, the needs, the expectations, the goals of the employer, of the parent. And so if they're experiencing something like medical health issues with the baby in the NICU, we'll assess that just the same. Well, what are the barriers there? What are the needs? What are the wants? What are the goals? What are we working towards?
Thank you, Lindsay. Can you also talk a little bit about, you in your bio you had that you also train educators and caregivers. Can you describe what that has been like and what do you see as the most I guess crucial the most crucial aspects of that education? Like whether it's trauma-informed care, whether, it's TBRI, like what does that look like and what do you find has been most important?
Sure. As you asked that question, the first thing that came to mind, we did this training of you can't spoil a baby, and just bringing some awareness to how maternal medical and mental health can directly impact the early development of the child. And so that's one thing that really stands out because there's a lot of what I didn't realize. I didn't realize how my depression, my sadness could have played a part in how my baby developed. And so bringing that awareness into caregivers, teachers, speaking about how important it is for them to value their mental health, their medical health, taking care of themselves, pouring into themselves, that it improves and increases their capacity to care for the little people that they care for so dearly.
Thank you for touching on that. We have another question. So adding on to the previous question about policy, are you aware of any current policies statewide or federally that promote extending maternal paid leave beyond 6 weeks, as many women are overcoming a C-section birth, breastfeeding, or health complications for baby mom post-birth? Are there ways to incentivize public and private entity employers to act on this?
Okay, I'm going to pull that question up so I can see it and read it too, because I think there's a lot of good points to touch on. So one, when a mom is experiencing birth and there is a C-section, that becomes a medical, and so that does increase it. As far as being aware of any current policies, statewide or federally, nothing that I am directly aware of. That doesn't mean that it's not out there. I'm just not aware of anything so far. And then incentives, public and private entity employers to act on this. Um, no, I spoke a little bit about retention and wellness. Do you want employees to stay, and do you want them to be well? And I think that if your employees and the people that make up this workplace and this workforce, if they are taken care of, then they will stay. And if they are well within themselves, then they can stay. And so I think that that's incentive enough. It should be.
So, Lindsay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, as we think about new moms going back to work, what can we as coworkers do to help support that? Because knowing there's been a lot of questions about policy, and there's certain federal structures and state structures, and then certain company policies. But as we think about coworkers and those of us that work with new parents, what are the things that we should be doing to think about how to support them in this journey?
hmm Let them know that you see them. Ask them. Initiate these conversations. You're going out on leave or you're new in pregnancy. What does it look like for me to be supportive to you? What do you need? Everyone is different. You may run across someone that says the best support that you can give for me is to allow me to just do this independently. I have my own support at home. I actually don't need support in the workplace. You may run across someone that says my support looks like checking in on me, sending me an email, leaving me a snack on my desk, of leaving me an orange on my desk every now and then, or giving me a warm hug, right? And so it's to be aware that everyone is different, to not expect this to look one size fits all. I think that's where we come into some of the the setbacks in policies, is because it treats it as a one size fits all. There is no one size fits all because everyone is so different. Everyone has their own needs, their own wants. And I think that's where career parental leave coaching comes into play, because we're going to directly ask, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? What are your goals in this? And helping them to really start to unfold, because a lot of the time, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need. If this pregnancy was planned or unplanned, we touch on all of these things to really diversify ourselves into what is a good, solid roadmap here. And so as an employee, as a coworker, it looks like saying, how can I help you? What does it look like for me to hold space for you? And just letting them know that you're a support.
All right, I've got one more question. So this year, Whole Health Louisiana has been really thinking about workplaces and like the systemic challenges and how specific groups can, within their workplace, think about having a more trauma-informed workplace. So as we think about that, as you work with, different parents across different industries, are there any best practices that you're seeing in specific industries that are things that you would call attention to? So I might say that, something that someone who works in a hospital is going to have just a whole group, a whole system that's thinking about trauma-informed care differently than maybe say someone in the education sector or someone in manufacturing or a different industry. So as you look at, across the board, are there different industries that are doing things differently? And what sort of best practices can we draw from that as we think about workplaces generally?
hmm Um, I think in just the culture of us, the tech world has a really, really big leg up in this. That a lot of my marketing and a lot of my interactions with people who work in the tech industry, these companies have unlimited leave or flexible leave. It's this flexibility that even if you're not in a transition of parenthood, that they say, we want work-life balance for you. You tell me what work-life balance looks like. And so that's something that I've just in working with many diverse people, I find that those people that are in that space, they are able to transition into these spaces a lot easier because they have people within their employee environment that say, we want our work done, but we also want you to be well. And so that also looks like phased in returning. I think I mentioned that a little bit in the slides, that it doesn't have to look like you have this date, you come in and everything is just back on like it never stopped. It's to have this mindfulness that you have experienced something beautiful, something possibly traumatic, something impactful in one way or another, to have this acknowledgement that you've experienced something. And so now that you're here, let me meet you where you are.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for your
Of
insight.
course.
Does anyone else have any additional questions for our speaker? I know we have 3 minutes left, but if there aren't any, I'm gonna just do a couple of closing announcements real quick. While people are maybe thinking of some questions. If you are attending for CEU credits, please do fill out the post survey so you can receive your CEU credits. And if you are interested and looking to see our future topics for our future lunch and learns, the link is in the chat, so you can check out the link to that as well. Also in the chat is Lindsay's email. Again, if you want to contact her directly, reach out to her in her email. We put that in the chat, as well as all of the resources that she referenced in her slide deck. If there aren't any additional questions, I think we will end today's webinar 3 minutes early. Thank you everybody so much for attending. Thank you, Lindsay, for your amazing presentation. And then thank you, obviously, to Lisa, our interpreter. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.